Modern Gunfighting Volume 3. The Eyes. Probably shouldn't have to tell you that your eyes are important in gunfighting. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, where we talk about guns and gunfighting, tactics, philosophy, the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am going to put in a quick rapid-fire version of the bio, just in case this is the first one you're listening to and you ask yourself, why should I listen to what this person has to say about shooting? It's a valid question. That's why I put in the bio. You want to skip it, you can, especially if you've already heard the bio before.
Blessed to have served in the military, law enforcement, combat veteran, private contractor, competition shooter, lifelong hunter, guide. Blessed by God that He got me through all those things so I could share this firsthand training, knowledge, experience with you to serve you today. Let's dive into the podcast.
The eyes. Now, in classic marksmanship fundamentals, you would talk about sight alignment and sight picture and front sight focus and things like that. But I think there's I wouldn't say better, but a more modern way to do that, maybe a different way to do that than you've heard before. What are your eyes doing, right? Your eyes are obviously important. The first thing I'm going to say about eyes, keep them open. Both of them. You have two eyes. God gave you two eyes. Don't give away like 40% of your peripheral vision in a gunfight. Keep your eyes open. I don't care if you're hunting. I don't care if you're gunfighting. I don't care if you're doing more precision rifle shooting, which is actually where I unlearned to close one eye and was taught to shoot with both eyes open. Because you get more fatigued if you try and close one eye over long, precise strings of fire. Keep your eyes open. There are some things that I'll tell you, but like this is the way that I do it, or there's a lot of different good ways to do it. But I'm going to tell you, unless there's some weird circumstance, like you have the sun blaring in one eye or something, keep both eyes open. I don't care if it's a handgun, I don't care if it's a shotgun, I don't care if it's a rifle, I don't care if it's a scoped rifle, I don't care if it's a rifle with a 25 power scope. Keep both eyes open. Okay. How many eyes do you keep open? 2. That's the correct answer to that. If you answer 2, good job. 100% on that quiz. The next thing we have to establish, and forgive me if you know this, but eye dominance. Eye dominance. Let's establish some eye dominance right now. If you don't know, put out your trigger finger. If you're right-handed, that's probably your right index finger. Put it over a small thing, whatever your target is going to be, your dry fire target, a spot on the wall, and then close one eye, and then close the other eye. You'll notice that finger dramatically jumps in relation to the target with one of those eyes. So you close your left eye. If you're right-handed, right eye dominant, which hopefully you are, when you close your left eye, that finger should stay in place. When you close your right eye, it should dramatically jump off the target. If it does the reverse of that, then you are left eye dominant. Most people, right-handed, right eye dominant. Some people are left-handed, left eye dominant, which for everything I'm saying, just kind of give it a 180, whether I'm talking about hands or feet or whatever. Some people are right-handed, left eye dominant, and some people are left-handed, right eye dominant. That's called cross-eye dominance. Now, if you got completely confused on everything I just said, here's an easier way to do that. Pick out that same little target, a little light switch or something. Look at it, keep both eyes open. How many eyes do you keep open when you shoot? 2. That's the correct answer to that question. Make a little triangle with both your hands. Make a little triangle with both your hands, and then bring your hands with both eyes open back to your face while still looking at the target. They will go back to one of your eyes. That is your dominant eye. Congratulations, you just found your dominant eye. Now, if you are cross-eye dominant for handgun shooting, it's pretty simple. So there's a super simple fix for this if you're cross-eye dominant if you're shooting a handgun. There's not all kinds of crazy stuff you have to do. Here's what you do. you turn your head a couple degrees to get your dominant eye behind the gun while still keeping both eyes open. You just slightly turn your head to get your dominant eye behind the gun. That's it. You know how I know that? Because I often shoot and practice with my left hand in shooting, either left-handed only or using my firing hand as my left hand with two hands. And you know what I do? I slightly turn my head as I'm bringing the gun out to the target to get my dominant eye behind the gun while keeping both eyes open. Don't overcomplicate that. If you're shooting with a handgun, slightly turn your head to get your dominant eye behind the gun. You have to do that pretty much all the time if you're cross-eye dominant, unless you're shooting with the offhand. If you are not cross-eye dominant, you still want to do that when you're shooting with your other hand. Just slightly turn your head prior when you're getting that gun up and on target, which we'll talk about the draw and later things. But when that gun is getting into action, whether from a ready position or a low ready or a slung rifle, slightly turn your head prior to firing. You can do that most of the time with a handgun. You can do that sometimes with a red dot with a modern, like, AR type rifle. However, with long guns, you may have to, if you're cross-eye dominant, because it's easier to change hand dominance than eye dominance, you may have to learn to shoot with your opposite hand. So, if you are cross-eye dominant, say right-handed, left-eye dominant, which is the most common one that I've seen, if you are that, then you may seriously want to consider learning to shoot, if you are talking about a rifle, with your left hand. That way your hand and your dominance line up with a rifle. It's way more of an issue with a rifle than with a handgun. Again, with a handgun, just slightly turn your head prior to firing. Not a big deal. With a rifle, because obviously that rifle goes into your shoulder, which is in line with that eye, that shoulder is more in line with that eye, that creates a more of an issue. If you're talking about like a red dot on a rifle, you can cant it and get by that way. However, you're probably going to want to learn to shoot with your left arm, left hand. And you should be able to shoot with your left hand, your left arm, even if you're right-handed, right-eye dominant. You should learn to shoot with both shoulders, both hands anyway. But especially if you're cross-eye dominant, you may just want to consider making that your shooting style default. Okay, now that we have eye dominance out of the way, because you have a dominant eye, just like you have a dominant hand. That's all well and good, but what are your eyes doing? Alright, I'm going to tell you first, and this is a different way to describe it than... And audio is not the best for this. It'll take me a lot longer to explain this, and you could just look up pictures. But your traditional kind of, and there's many different styles. There's like buckhorns and semi-buckhorns and barleycorn sights and post and notch sights and 3-dot sights. Your traditional, you got some kind of protuberance, some kind of thing that sticks up on the front of the gun, and then some kind of notch on the rear of a gun. Whether you're talking about, a Glock 17 or a Mauser K98. You have some kind of post in the front and some kind of notch in the back. You line those up so they're flat across the top and you have equal light on both sides of the sight. Boom. For a aperture style sight, you center the front of that post in the center of the aperture, which is usually a circle. That's pretty simple. Again, if this doesn't make sense, look it up. It's pretty simple, and you probably naturally will do it anyway. And if it's some kind of optical device, a reticle, a red dot, a green triangle, crosshairs, and a scope, you line that up with the target, right? That's not rocket science. You may have different holdovers, especially with a handgun. You may prefer a 6 o'clock hold or a combat hold or this or that, but you get the idea. I'm not going to get too far into that. Look up pictures for that. It's so much easier than audio. If you're not tracking, if you're not smelling what I'm stepping in, then you might want to look that up. Now, once your sights are aligned, you got to line them up on the target. But let's back up. What should your eyes be doing when you are shooting? Well, first, and this probably has been described to you not this way before, but look at the target and find the target, right? You have to find what you're going to shoot at before you can shoot at it. That might sound simple, but a lot of times people harp on front sight focus, front sight focus. Look on the front sight, but you have to find the target first, right? You have to know what you're shooting at. And if you're only shooting at a piece of paper on a square range in an indoor range where the thing goes and runs a target out there and stops, 3 yards away, and the dude and the target's a giant silhouette of a man standing there broadside, not really hard to find the target. However, we're training for gunfighting, we're training for keeps, we're training for even hunting. You have to find the target. So what should your eyes be doing as a default? They should be looking for threats or food, right? They should be looking for the target, whether that's threat or food. This is the subtitle of the podcast is Survival Guns. The duality kind of survival guns is putting food on the table, providing, calories for you and your family, good healthy calories, and protection. So what should your eyes be doing? They should be looking for targets. They should be identifying threats, eliminating threats, moving on, finding targets, finding food opportunities, scanning the area, situational awareness. That's what your eyes should be doing. They should be situationally aware and looking for potential targets, identifying targets. Only once you've identified a target, and let's get out of the square range mind mentality where it's a giant silhouette 3 yards away or 7 yards away and you know exactly where it is. Because that's not real life. I mean, it's real life when you're at the range, but that's generally not. I've never seen a gunfight where the guy's like, hold on, I'm going to slowly walk 3 yards in front of you, stop, turn broadside, and let you shoot at me. Find the target. Be scanning for the target. Be situationally aware. That's what your eyes should be doing as a default. They should be looking around, head up, both eyes open, looking for targets. So that's what your eyes should be doing. Now, once you've identified a target and you've decided there's a target, you may want to move to cover, away from cover, to the target, locate, close with, and destroy the enemy. So you might want to move. And then at some point you may decide, hey, I would like to introduce a firearm into this equation to tip the scales in my favor. Whether that's getting meat off the hoof or stopping a radical Islamic terrorist that wants to cut my head off with a dull knife. You may decide at some point a firearm is the right answer to introduce into this survival math equation. When you have done that, whether it's a rifle or a handgun, I'm going to default to the handgun here because it's the harder weapon to shoot. Okay, now I have to get my handgun into action. Ready, position, draw, which we'll get into later. But once you get that gun semi-up where it can be in your peripheral vision, I'm still going to tell you to look at the target. You're going to notice that gun come into your peripheral vision, whether it's a rifle or, in this case, a handgun. It's going to come up into your peripheral vision. Keep looking at the target. Now, that whole gun is probably going to come up into your peripheral vision. You'll have to start shifting focus because just like your mind can only hardcore focus on one thing at a time, it has a primary area of focus. Your eyes have a primary area of focus. Take your finger and put it in front of your face, arm's length, and then put it in front of a wall or a tree or wherever you're at, and then stare hard at your finger. You'll notice the thing in the background is blurry. You stare hard at the thing in the background, your finger is blurry. That's how the human eye works. That's how it is. This is not a two-dimensional, iPhone screen. I know a lot of people today spend a lot of time looking at iPhone screens, but the real world is three-dimensional, and the human eye can only focus on one focal plane in a distance at a time. So we have to choose, in general, what we're going to focus on. So when that gun starts coming into peripheral vision, you're going to guide that gun using your vision and your body towards a target. Once you start getting more of that gun introduced, right, then you're going to start shifting your focus to the sighting system of that gun. You have to find those sights. Don't even worry about aligning them yet. You have to find them on the gun. Or you have to find that red dot, that optic. You have to find that dot, that aiming system. You have to find it. So right now, and this could all happen in the tenths of a second. But at some point, you have to find the aiming device, whatever you're going to use to aim. You have to find that in your vision. So you have to identify it, and then you're probably going to look at it. Now, how hard a focus really depends on many factors. How fast are you shooting? How far away is your target? Are you using a red dot, iron sights? Those all are variables. But you're going to have to look at, with some degree of mental awareness, that aiming device. Now, before we run, let's learn how to walk. And I often put it this way. If you can't shoot good slow, you're not going to shoot good fast. It's not how that works. You don't teach a toddler to sprint, right? Has anybody ever taught their toddler to walk by teaching them how to sprint first? No. So If you can't shoot good slow, you're probably not going to shoot good fast. Once you learn how to shoot good slow, then we can cheat a little bit, because we know that if I get a perfect sight picture, I can put my rounds here. But if I'm trying to shoot fast, I can get by with a little bit more imperfect sight picture. So I'm not going to eat up that time in the equation, in that survival gunfight gun survival equation. I'm not going to eat up that time getting a perfect sight picture, because I know at this distance with this gun I don't need it. And that comes with experience. But again, if you are learning to shoot, if you are listening to this, if you want to get better, let's worry about the proper way to do it before we start worrying about cheating. If you can't shoot good slow, you're not going to shoot good fast. And some people will tell you, you don't have to focus on the red dot or the optic. It's one of the great things about it. And you don't have to, but if you're trying to shoot precisely, I still advise you to, whether it's the sights or the optic, I want you to focus on it, because you got to focus somewhere. And some people say, focus on the target, it's the threat. Here's the thing. The human eye is attracted to movement. If your target moves, you'll know. That's how the human brain and the human mind works. So relax with that. If your target moves, you'll know, right? I doubt you're going to... If you're so focused on your front sight that the target completely walks away and is not there, and you still are focused on that front sight and pull the trigger, that would blow my mind. I've never seen that happen in all my years of shooting or training. If the target moves, probably you'll notice it, okay? So focus on... That being said, I know the thing is, but you don't have to, you can target focus it. Focus, I'm telling you, again, you can cheat a little bit later, but for now, focus on the aiming system. Now, we talked about you can only focus on one focal plane at a time. If you have a handgun and you have your front and rear sights, let's stick to iron sights for now, and you move that muzzle of that gun, which of those sights is going to move more? If you move generally your shooting position, which one of those sights is going to move more? The front sight, because it's the farthest away from your body. That's how levers work. So that has the most impact as far as what you have control over as to where your bullet is going to hit. So that's what you want to focus on. You focus on the front sight. Now you're going to see the front sight, you're going to see the rear sight, and you're going to see the target, but you want to focus on the front sight. And again, this is you can cheat later, but for now, focus on that front sight. Same thing with an optic. When you start introducing that pistol and you have an optic, you switch to what you're looking at. You pick up that dot and you drive that dot, or you drive those sights into that target. You look at that aiming system. That is what you are doing. Hopefully, if you keep both eyes open and you don't flinch, I mean flinch meaning you don't blink, you don't close your eyes, and you're not shooting some crazy heavy recoiling gun, you should be able to track those sights. So when the gun goes off, you're looking at the sight the entire time and driving it back towards a target. Like, let's say you're shooting a plate rack. You fire, you the front sight of the dot, bang, you see that front sight arch, and you drive it down to the next plate, bang, drive it to the next plate, bang, drive it to the next plate, bang. It's not like a bang, and then you close your eyes, and you flinch, and then you open your eyes again, and you have to find the whole process over again. That's slow and inefficient. Keep looking at the sighting system and drive it towards the target and follow it. And we'll talk about executing the trigger in a later episode. But right now we're talking about what the eyes are doing. So what you're going to want to do is you're looking at the target. You're going to, at some point, introduce a gun into the equation. Find the gun in your peripheral vision. Drive it towards the target. Once those two things are interposed, once you can kind of see the gun and the target, start looking at your sighting system on your gun. Focus on it while you're executing the shot. Now, if you are shooting multiple targets, what you are going to want to do is you fire your, whatever you've decided is your number of shots. You're going to fire one shot, you're going to fire two shots, you're going to fire four shots, whatever. Or you're going to look, I remember, stop training for a flat range, not everything is a double tap. Maybe you identify a target, you go to execute that shot, and while your finger's getting prepped on the trigger, oh, that guy dropped the knife, he's not a threat anymore. And again, what are your eyes doing as a default? They're scanning for targets. They're scanning for threats. So maybe your sights are on that target, and again, if the target moves, you should know maybe that guy has a knife, and he's a target, and you're introducing a gun, and he decides to drop that knife before you execute the shot. So what are your eyes doing as a default? They're scanning for targets. So that guy, you might want to keep your eye on him, but you might want to scan, and you pick up his buddy running at you full bore with a crowbar. Now he's the target, right? So what are you going to do? Again, you're going to pick out that target, right? You're not going to keep focused on your front sight, because if you did, you'd be killed by the guy with the crowbar, because your eyes aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So once that guy's not a threat, what do? You're scanning for threats. You pick that guy up with the crowbar. You transition. So here's what your eyes are doing. You're bang, guy with crowbar. What are you doing now? You're introducing a gun into that equation. So you're going to move the gun over. You're going to pick that gun up in your peripheral vision, whether that's left, right, up, down, whatever. You're going to pick that gun up in your peripheral vision and drive it into the target. Once you see that gun kind of superimposed with the target, you're going to start focusing on the sighting system and execute the shot. And you're going to repeat. Maybe that guy gets 4 rounds to the chest because he's running at you full bore with a crowbar. And then, whatever scenario we're in, maybe that guy decides, you know what, I was going to take my ball and go home, but you just killed my buddy, so I'm bringing my knife back out. And now you got to retransition over to that dude. What do your eyes do? Same thing. That guy's down. You still want to be aware of him, but you're scanning. What are your eyes doing? What, as a default, they're looking for targets. So that guy's got a knife again, and he's mad, to be politically correct. He's mad, and he decides he wants you to stop breathing. So he's coming at you. What do? Your eyes find that target, because that's what your eyes are doing, right? They're finding targets, and then you're introducing a gun into the equation. So you're picking up the gun with your periph, and then you're driving it into the target, and you're looking for the sighting system on that gun, and you're looking at the sighting system on that gun and executing the shot. Whether it's that tactical scenario, whether you're doing a plate rack, again, what are you doing? Target, so a plate. You're not just looking at the plate rack blind. You're focusing on the plate. Maybe you're focusing on the top 1/3 of that plate. You're executing the shot, and you're finding the next. As soon as that, you should be able to call your shots, which is a whole nother skill we haven't talked about yet. But once you've executed that shot, not when you wait to hear the steel ring, because that's a waste of time. Once you've executed that shot and you've called that as a good shot, you move on and find the next target, and then you introduce the gun into the equation, find the sighting system, and execute the shot. Now, if you're tracking your gun, you may not have to. You may just keep on the sighting system every time. But in general, that's how that works, right? Let's do a hunting scenario. You're walking, you're doing a spot and stalk hunt. You don't have your rifle on a sling because you're being a good boy. You have it in your hands at a ready position, and you are walking a logging road, and you see 75 yards ahead of you, because the human eye is attracted to movement, a doe walk across a trail, and she's gone. But you know what generally follows a doe this time of year when you're hunting? Maybe a buck. So you're ready, right? You're hyper vigilant. You're hyper aware. What are you doing? Your eyes are scanning for a target. And out walks a nice 8-point buck, a nice 4x4, depending on where you're at in the country or whatever. A nice buck steps out, and he's legal, and you've got your tag, and you're like, yup, that's my meat. And what are you doing? You're scanning for targets. You find a target. You focus on a spot on that target. So the target is not the deer. I mean, the deer is a target, but the target is probably that pocket behind the front shoulder, depending on shot angle. But you get, if it's a general broadside shot, your shot is either right at the front shoulder, the crease of the front shoulder, slightly behind the front shoulder, depending on different things, shot angles, the caliber you're using. But let's just say the pocket behind the front shoulder. You're going to find that target. You're going to introduce a gun into the equation. You're going to start picking up the gun, driving it. Then you're going to, when you can, focus on the sighting system of that gun, which, let's say for this, you run an LPVO, 1-4 power scope. Hopefully you have it set on the lowest power, because that's generally what you need. And you put the reticle behind the front shoulder, and you execute the shot properly. Then what do? You look for target. Now, you may only have one deer tag, but still, if you pulled that trigger, you've decided to engage that target, you hit that deer, and that deer is still up. What do you still have? A target. So you find that spot again, you find your sighting system again, and you execute the shot. Right? That's what are your eyes doing? So to explain it in plain English in a couple of different scenarios, that's what your eyes are doing. Their default is looking for target. When you find a target, you decide, yay or nay, I'm going to introduce a gun into this equation. You pick up that gun in your peripheral vision, whether it's from a sling, whether it's from your hands in a port position, whether it's a high ready or from a holster, you're going to somehow introduce a gun into that equation. You're going to pick up the gun in your peripheral vision. You're going to drive it into the target. When you can, you're going to start looking at the sighting system of that gun. You're going to execute the amount and degree of focus required for that sighting system and the proper trigger control required for that situation and execute that shot and then find targets. That's what you do. That's what your eyes are doing. And maybe you've never heard it explained that way, but that's the way that I'm going to explain it. And I hope that that makes sense. Hey guys, I appreciate you listening. If you guys don't know, if you don't keep up with my day-to-day, the world doesn't revolve around me, I don't blame you. But I went back to doing some professional gunfighting, some professional private contracting work, private security contracting. Anyway, I for years was doing the podcast and I was eating into savings, and it was time to go back and make some savings, build them back up by God's grace. It's a lot doing both jobs, and I'm not complaining. I'm happy to have both jobs, but I'm just saying it's a lot. I would still like, and by God's grace, would like this podcast to become a full-time income. If you would like that, if you got any value out of this podcast, you're not already a patron. The patron's give enough. If you're not already a patron, consider becoming one. Mostly because you're like, hey, I appreciate what this guy does. I want to support it. Christian, veteran, small business, American, gluten-free, all the buzzwords. I want to support something like that. Consider becoming a patron, mostly because you believe in it. But also patrons get a lot of cool insider-only content. So consider becoming a patron. That's all I'm going to say about that. Your tactical tip of the day, even though I think this podcast was like a lot of tactical tips. Your tactical tip of the day, we talked about eyes a lot and what your eyes are doing. If you have a 3-dot sight on your pistol, do yourself a big favor if you're talking about modern practical shooting and get rid of 2 of those dots. So your tactical tip of the day is get a Sharpie. Right? Not everything has to cost $50 on Amazon. Get a Sharpie and black out your rear sight if you're shooting a 3-dot sight. If you only care again about that flat range, you're going to shoot a giant silhouette at 3 yards, at 7 yards, and you're going to properly line up the sights every time, then whatever, you stick with your 3 dots if you want. But if you want a more practical sighting system and you're shooting irons on a handgun, get rid of the 2 rear dots. Have 1 dot. Have black sights and a bright dot. And if you want to get, what do the kids say now, bougie, you can get some obnoxiously bright colored fingernail polish. If your front dot is already white, then that'll save you a step. What you can do is take like a paper clip or a toothpick and take some tactical peanut butter. Yes, peanut butter. Again, not everything has to cost $50 on Amazon. Take some peanut butter and lightly coat the black metal that you don't want painted, and then dab inside that dot some obnoxious, just gaudy, loud colored fingernail polish. Like lime green, chartreuse, bright orange, bright pink. And just put it inside that dot if you want a more obnoxiously colored dot. And then once it dries, wipe the spot off with the peanut butter, and it should leave the inside of the dot painted and the rest of your sight not painted. And now you have a black rear and an obnoxiously colored bright front sight if you want to do that. Anyway, that's your tactical tip of the day. Your tactical verse of the day. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I shall give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.